Limelight. We're super excited to be supporting local talent in the community, and it's a very special event today. We're going to be talking about the book, and we have a very special guest, soloist with Pacific Northwest Ballet, Sarah Gabrielle Ryan. Come on in. And so, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to the two of you. Okay.
Thanks to everybody for coming. Do you think maybe we could turn the music?
Oh, yes.
I'm so excited to see so many familiar faces that are near and dear to me, so that makes it extra special. And really happy to have Sarah with me, which is like amazing. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about the book. I thought I would tell you a little bit about it, and I was going to read. There's a section that actually takes place in a store very much like this one. The owner is much quirkier. Hi. But I thought it would be appropriate to read that section since we're in the store. And then I thought it would be really neat to have Sarah talk a little bit about when she first went on Pointe, maybe her early ballet years. And then we can do Q&A, and you guys can ask questions, and then I'll sign some books, and we can hang out and have some gummy bears and all of that good stuff. So maybe I'll start with reading, just to give you a little bit of a flavor for what's in the book. So, actually, no, I'm going to tell you about the three main characters before I read, because that will give you some context. So, Lauren Limelight tells the story of three students who are from Mercer Island. Some of you may have been to Mercer Island. And it chronicles the year that they go on Pointe, which may be ahead for some of you. Yes, maybe. And it also talks about them auditioning for the Pacific Northwest Ballet School, which might also sound a little familiar to you. And there are three students, so there's Lauren, obviously, and she's from Mercer Island, and she's always kind of been the best at her ballet school, but she hasn't had to try very hard. Ballet has kind of come easy to her. And then at the opening of the book, a new girl arrives, and when she comes into class, she's better than Lauren, and that's kind of the first time where Lauren's not the best in the school anymore. And Serena is from the East Coast, and Serena has had a tragedy in her family. And her mom was a dancer, so her mom is really pushing her to dance, whereas Lauren's family sort of doesn't want her to and can't really afford it. And then the third character is named Brian. Brian is a black boy from Mercer Island who wants to dance on Pointe. And as you can imagine, his parents aren't so supportive of that. And the book basically shows their friendship and their journey to kind of realize who they are and what is dance is going to mean in their lives, and it's different for all three of them. And through that, ballet becomes a little bit of a prism for how they find themselves, how they figure out who they are. It also becomes sort of a safe space where they have friends. Brian in particular is bullied at school, and so when he comes to ballet, though, he's the favorite, and they all love him. And you know, it is definitely a ballet story, but I like to think of it more of just a coming of age story, that these kids could be doing any sort of sport or anything that makes them work hard and challenge themselves and figure out where that fits into their life. So hopefully a lot of you will recognize either your current self or your younger self. I think 12 is a really big age. A lot happens at that age. And it was really fun to write about these characters and think about them, because many of my students are that age, my kids are that age, and I really wanted dance students to feel seen, and I think as a kid, I felt most seen in books, and there are not many dance kids in books, so this felt really important. It felt like a gift I needed to give to the community, that we could then talk about these kids, see these kids, recognize them, and think about what they need to get a good experience out of ballet, that it can give them something really positive back. So the scene I'm going to read is when Lauren gets to go get her first pair of pointe shoes at the ballet store, so that seemed appropriate for today. Okay. And keep in mind, this is not on Pointe Bellevue, and the owner is not Rhea. But of course, being in this ambiance sort of evokes the same feeling as this scene. And why is my bookmark not in the right place? I have to look for the picture, because there is a beautiful Has anyone had a chance to look through the images in the book? Because there's a whole backstory to those. So sorry, I don't know. Maybe I picked up the wrong. Oh, here it is. Nope, here we go. Okay. The Ballet Boutique on Main Street had the best dance shoes and clothes selection. We'd shopped there since I was too young to remember, and they moved locations and changed ownership when I was in 3rd grade. I'd stared longingly at the Pointe shoes for so many years. I thought of Brian, who always wanted to go to the Ballet Boutique. His mom refused to take him and ordered all his dance supplies online. He said she's too embarrassed to go there. Old Madame Anessa, the original owner, had introduced me to dozens of shoes, leotards, and warm-up clothes. I had good memories there. There was an extensive article about Madame Anessa in the newspaper after she died. People were sad. They said she had a minor career in the Bolshoi, but it didn't sound minor from how she talked about it in her dancing days. I learned a lot of history from that newspaper article. Despite the change in owners, Madame Anessa's old mouse king head from the Pacific Northwest Ballet's original Lou Christensen version of the Nutcracker was still on display. There was a sugar plum fairy tiara from P&B's Stowell Sendak version too. Madame Anessa had a relative who worked in the P&B costume shop, so she'd acquired some valuable ballet relics. The company switched to a Balanchine version when I was too little to remember anything different. I was out of the car before Mom turned off the engine. The bells on the door chimed when I walked in. Oh, did I love that place. Signs like tutus, tiaras, and tights, warm up and look wonderful, and leotards that give you a leg up pointed out where to go. Framed autograph posters of famous dancers covered the walls, and elegant chairs were tucked into the nooks. Before a full-length mirror, a bench and a small practice bar were mounted on the wall in the shoe fitting area. The Swan Lake music playing over the sound system made me feel at home. Mariana, Madame Anessa's daughter-in-law and the current owner, was behind the counter, calmly reading a romance novel and eating a bowl of cereal. She wore her usual pink baseball cap with Danceaholic embroidered across the front. She once told us that she wore the hat to cover a scar on the side of her head from brain surgery. I wasn't sure that was true. Everyone knew Mariana at age 57 took open adult classes at various studios in Seattle and Bellevue. Even though she was older than my mother, she still danced on Pointe and could do the splits. Mom said Mariana was quite a character. I had fun writing about this scene too. And as you can see, there's a beautiful illustration of her getting her shoes. I will skip ahead a little bit. Mariana told my mom what a good teacher Ms. Evangeline was and how glad she was that I went to her school. Evie knows not to allow students to go on Pointe until age 11 when the bones have formed in the metatarsal and the joint in your big toe. The pressure Pointe work puts on the foot can cause malformation if done too early or without proper strength and technique. While she spouted all that mumbo jumbo, Mariana measured the length and width of my feet. She made notes about the shape and size of my toes and the height of my arch. Lay your toes completely flat, she said. Don't curl or scrunch. I tried on a dozen pairs, searching for the perfect shoes that fit snugly around my toes without pinching anywhere. Mariana tested the fit while I stood on flat, point, and demi-point. She explained that the sole of the toe shoe is called the shank, and I needed a shank that would stay even with my foot and not move to the side when I went up on Pointe. Mom asked her a million questions about the different brands and how they were made. All I wanted was to take the first pair I tried on and play around in them, but this was serious business. I think that probably gives you the flavor. That's one of the more humorous sections. There are more serious sections, and there probably was a lot of ballet mumbo jumbo in there, but I think a lot of you probably recognize some of it, right? And maybe I'll turn it over to Sarah for a little bit so she can kind of talk about maybe your experience, your first time getting your Pointe shoes.
Yeah, I actually think it's funny what you just read about 11's probably a better age. I was definitely too young. I was 9
Were you?
when I went on Pointe, and I think about that a lot. I don't think my foot was fully developed, and even after COVID, because we weren't dancing our 6-hour days, I wasn't putting my foot in a Pointe shoe that much. My foot grew when I came back, when we went back to our full season. So I just wonder how much bigger my feet would have been had I not.
What size are your feet?
They're a 7, it's normal,
Okay. It's interesting.
but it just makes me wonder.
Foot binding.
Yeah. But getting my first pair of Pointe shoes was total magical experience. I remember I was shaking. My mom and her sister, my aunt, came to a store much like this. It was like this beautiful brick stone I'm from Philadelphia, so like all the buildings there are really old and gorgeous, and the people that owned the store, it was called the Rosin Box, and they
that's
it was really cute, and they actually like lived above the store. So I remember I would get there really early sometimes to get my pointe shoes, and they weren't even up yet, and they'd like call down from the window and be like, we'll be right there. But I remember that was like my dream. I romanticized that, and I'm like, I don't know if it's great to live where you work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so cool going in there, and it was just filled with pointe shoes, and yeah, and it was like kind of the go-to spot in Philadelphia. So I was like 9, and I was shaking. My mom and my aunt are there, and they're trying all these different brands and sizes, and they were also like amazing. I feel like somehow you all know exactly what size to try us in right away, and
it's like another art form, right?
No, it's so cool. But yeah, it was cool to try. Like I remember, what
was your first pair?
I think
was
I started in Grishko's, like Grishko 2009. But like I tried Russian points, and then I was in blocks for a little bit. But yeah, they tried me in everything. I remember being scared, and it was really cool. And then
what color were they? Because mine were like Capezio, Pepto-Bismol, pink.
I think they were normal.
Right. We're of a different generation, but like when I think back, I think my kids have tried on my first pair, and they're like pretty ridiculous. Like it's much better now.
Well, I feel like I had that experience all over again too when I was like 14, and people wanted me to switch into freeds, and that was like a whole other world because there's so many different types. And
were you still at the rock school then? Where were you studying when you switched to freed?
I was at the rock school, but the reason I was doing it, 14 was when I started, or 13 actually, was when I started guesting with Pennsylvania Ballet and like their choir roles and stuff. And they were
young.
Like, it was young. And they were like, we need to get her in a freed because that's when they started covering my shoe costs. But that was also a very jarring experience because they're so different than any other pointe shoe, I think.
Yeah.
Now a lot of kids are starting in freed studios, right?
Yep.
What does that mean?
That's a brand. A
It'll
brand.
make it easier in the long run.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's a really hard adjustment. For me.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. One other thing I was going to tell you about are the illustrations. One of the reasons I wanted to bring them up is that the artist, Jill Cecil, is actually going to do some original art to put in Ria's store. And the way that the illustrations came about is I knew the artist. We danced together as kids in Utah. I didn't know her very well because she was a few years behind me, but when I started writing this book, we had a mutual friend who put us in touch, and she just wanted to illustrate it because this is like the kind of illustrations that she does. And so over time we kind of worked together in some of the scenes, and we had a mutual friend who had started her own ballet school in Utah, kind of outside of Salt Lake. And there was one weekend where I flew to Salt Lake and we went to the studio that our friend owns, which has now become part of the Valley West Academy. And the students acted out the story, and we took pictures of them acting out the story, and those images became the characters and actually really helped me write another draft, because once I sort of had been in the classroom with these children, they became very real to me. And what's very cool is that as I go on with this book tour, I'm going to go to Salt Lake, and the kids that were in the illustrations are going to do some events with me too and talk about it, because having them kind of experience the story and talk about it too really brought it to life for both the illustrator and myself. And you know, as a teacher, I spend so much time, well, I have 4 kids of my own, but I also spend a lot of time with kids sort of in this age range, and it was really fun to write about them. I really feel like we spend so much time looking at the people who are not doing the work, or maybe who have done all the work already and are already there, but I wanted to really look at what these kids do, and also just for their well-being. I think it's really important that we see them not just as dancers, but as people. And so the books really try to explore who these kids are as people and what they're grappling with. And I would like dance to have a role in many, many people's lives, and not just people who become like Sarah, but people who can come and just take what they need from it. And so that was kind of my hope with the book. And did you have something else you want to talk about, or maybe ballet books that you liked as a kid? Do you remember reading many ballet books, or?
I actually don't remember reading many ballet specifically books. I was always in the like fantasy.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh neat.
But
Because there's not a lot.
there's not a lot,
Right.
and maybe that is why, like there wasn't as
There
much of a
wasn't very
market
much at
at that time.
Well, I'm just thinking about your era because, I mean, the books that I read were A Very Young Dancer, which is from the 70s. Have you ever seen that book? That follows, it's actually in pictures, but it follows one of the girls who's Clara in the Nutcracker with City Ballet. And then there was a Satin Slipper series. Maybe some of the moms have read some of them, were my age group. And then there's Ballet Shoes. But otherwise, there's very, very little ballet fiction,
Yeah,
especially
for
for
kids.
for kids.
Too. I think that's also a very specific thing. Like there was a lot of ballet books that I don't know, as much as there's like Black Swan
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was anything really for us in that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and even now, a lot of the stuff that's coming out, I mean, if you look at, P&B, we have libraries at both locations. If you look in there, you'll find nonfiction, you'll find memoirs of famous dancers, you'll find stories of the great ballets, and you'll find, sort of more technical history, and you'll also find children's books. There's many, many picture books, but there's very little sort of in that middle space. And especially when I left dance and I was in college, reflecting on what I'd learned, I just really felt like, gosh, I wish there had been more for me to read at that age. So I just kind of have kept going with it. I felt kind of obligated, like a way to kind of give back to the dance community. So do we want to do questions, Q&A? If people have, my husband has a question. Okay, let's hear it.
What was the process like in terms of writing the book once you decided you wanted to do so?
Okay, the process of writing the book. He knows that pretty well. But, and that's kind of, you'll get a long answer for that. So I started writing my dance books when I was in my 20s, when I left college. And there are 2 earlier books that are going to be reissued actually in about a month. And Sarah's on the cover. So they're like the most beautiful covers ever. I was so excited to have her because she represents a lot of things that I think are beautiful and wonderful about dance today. And it's not an easy journey to be where you are now, and I think a lot of times people don't know that. So the other 2 books they're called Girl in Motion, and then the second one was originally called Breaking Pointe, but because that became kind of a corny reality TV show about Ballet West, in the reissue, I love Ballet West, I grew up there, but it'll be titled Girl on Pointe, the sequel. And those books, I wrote them in my 20s, and then after my ballet career, I went to Stanford, and then I went to New York and worked in book publishing, and I tried to sell those books. I had someone who's a big agent in New York, but at the time we were both young assistants, and she tried to sell those books 20 years ago, and the publishing houses did not want them. That was right when Twilight was really big, and so they don't have vampires in them. And my husband Daniel keeps saying I need to put vampires in my books. So anyway, what I heard then was ballet is too niche. We don't know how to market these. I mean, obviously publishing is a business. You have to find the people who know how to do them. So I kind of put those books in a drawer for like 10 more years. And for young people, let this be a lesson to you that if dreams don't happen today, they could happen in 20 years. And then I moved to Seattle to work on the Amazon Books team. This was like my 10 years of not ballet. And that was right when Create Space started, which was sort of the self-publishing arm of Amazon. And my husband Daniel said, well, let's just self-publish them. And those books were a little bit of a miracle because we did self-publish them, and we did not have professionally designed covers. They were not edited, they were not designed, and they sold 10,000 copies, and which is more than a lot of traditionally published books. So that was kind of shocking. And that was also kind of before social media was a thing. Like I put them on Facebook, but I also studied in a lot of places. I've been to San Francisco Ballet School and Penn the Rock School and SAB, and I danced in Miami. So if I put them on my social media, I had networks in many places. So dance people, it's actually a very small, beloved community. And so that's sort of how that happened. But through that process, it became very clear to me there was a market for these books and that people wanted to read them. But then I had 4 kids and that kind of went, you know. But then during COVID, I started writing again, and the age group I really hadn't addressed was this, you know, pre-Pointe age. And my kids were also reaching that age, and they're ballet students, so obviously I'm teaching these ballet students, I'm thinking about them a lot. So then I wrote this book, and then to me, the fact that this book is out is a little bit of a miracle, because I spent 2 years querying literary agents to see if somebody would take it on and sell it to a big house, and all I heard was, ballet is too niche, ballet is too niche. People didn't know how to market them, and a lot of that is because a lot of the publishing industry operates off of books that have been successful before, and there are no other books like this book. I mean, there's ballet shoes, but after a couple of years, Gina and I looked at each other and said, I'm tired of being rejected. So this is another lesson for young people, is that just because other people tell you you can't do something, if you know in your heart that you can do something, you can still do something. And so I started my own publishing house, and because I'd worked in publishing for a decade, so I knew a lot of how that gets done. And we did this book ourselves. So I started Rhododendron Press. This is our launch title. We invested like a small business, so I'm got to sell some copies to make it back. But I really hope people like it, and then we are going to reissue the other 2 books. And it's just been a really nice also way to connect with the dance community. I think, especially because the dance community is so spread out with the internet now today, we're able to be in a lot more connected with each other. And gosh, it's been so amazing to reconnect with people, my students, the parents of my students, my adult students, my friends from many years ago in the company. And then now this has turned into a book tour where I'm going to Salt Lake City, and I'm going to Stanford, and I'm going to LA, and I'm going to New York now. And it's super exciting, and it's been a really nice way to kind of remind my older self how much ballet has meant to me, and that it's been so much more about the community and the friends, and not necessarily who did what part or how far you made it, but that everybody kind of has a place in it, and it can just take a long time to find your place in it. So anyway, that was a very long-winded answer. The end. And you can ask Sarah questions too, I'm sure a lot of, yes.
I'm honestly a bookworm. I read at least 2 books a night.
Talk loud, because everyone wants to hear what you're saying.
How long have you wanted to publish a book?
Great question. Do you want to write a book? Okay. Maybe since I was about your age. I'm a huge reader also. I mean, life gets in the way, but I try to read. Well, now it's like if I'm strictly make myself do 10 minutes every night, which is like a lot less than you. I'm sure it's a lot less than my kids. But I've been a huge reader my whole life. I love to write stories as a kid. English was my favorite subject in school. I love to write stories for my own enjoyment. And the publishing thing sort of just grew and grew and grew over time. And actually, what I will tell you is, one of the reasons that I wanted to publish a book is that I really love the people in publishing. I feel like other people who love stories were my people. I mean, dance people are like that too, right? When you're dancing, a lot of times you're telling a story. I think that's sort of just a natural human thing that we like to do. Do you like to tell stories? I like to watch stories, tell stories. So I feel like it grew and grew and grew over a very long period of time. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that does.
Keep reading a lot. It's good. Yes.
What's some advice you give to people who want to write stories and like publish books?
Read a lot, which is actually kind of a cliche answer that when people ask writers that, and not only read a lot, but study what you read, kind of like when you take ballet class and you study other dancers. I really believe writing is a craft much like dancing, and it's the kind of thing where you have to be willing to do it badly and do it a lot, right? And make a lot of mistakes. But the more you do it, it really is like flexing a muscle, and it's very similar in a lot of ways to ballet. Like you don't have to write, you don't have to dance, but it's the kind of thing where the more that you do it, the more it gives back to you. So that would be my best advice: is read a lot, study what you're reading, look at what works and what doesn't work, and then practice. And when you feel brave, let someone read it. take their, just like you take corrections in a ballet class, you know, you can, I mean, be wise about who you're getting corrections from. But it is very much a craft. It's not like I think the story of how I wrote these 2 books in my 20s and I tried to sell them and they didn't sell, it isn't just that the publishing world didn't want a ballet book at that time. It was that I didn't really know what I was doing, that I've been working on my writing skills for 20 plus years, and a lot of failures, and I'm continuing to do that. My intention is write more, write better every time. I don't know if that's helpful to you.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
just keep going. Anyone, other questions? Yeah, Chris.
Right, you write a story. Do you have the basic plot kind of sketched out in your head from start to finish and fill in the details, or does the plot emerge as you go through it?
Okay, that's a really good question. To me, the plot comes from the characters. So a lot of times, especially now, I would say originally when my early books, it was more plot based because I had a lot of material in my head from my experiences. But with this book in particular, and because we went and saw the students, I really just tried to be true to who the 3 characters were. I really tried to focus on who do I want in this book, what is their journey going to be, because each of the characters in the book has a very clear arc of they begin one way and they end in a different way. And so once I really thought about those characters and I thought about, okay, what would their birthday party be like? And right, like, and then I would write a scene. And then through writing that scene, I would understand them better, because how would they behave at this birthday party? And after that, or I would say, well, what does Brian do if he wants to wear pointe shoes and his dad is worried he's gonna get beat up, right? Like, how would he have that conversation with his dad? So I'd write little scenes like that, and through that, the plot emerged. So that was just, but everybody has kind of a different, yes?
How long does it take to probably like write a book?
This one took me maybe 6 to 8 months, the first draft, and then I got a lot of feedback on it, and then I had to rewrite it completely because the original version was only told through Lauren's point of view. And I had a very wise mentor, because I learned to go to the experts for advice, who said it would be much more interesting if it was told from each character's point of view. And so then I had to go back and start over. Just like ballet, you do your plies every day. And then I had to say, okay, I know how the scene works from Lauren's point of view. How would the scene work from Brian's point of view? Or how would this work from Serena's point of view? And I just did the work, just like you do.
Books are great when they have like different point of views, because then you can know like how people feel about others and how they think some things go. And like how it has different point of views.
That's really wise, yeah. And I mean, that's one thing I really wanted, is I wanted people to put themselves in the shoes of these characters. Like, that just, people don't think about that. Or I don't know. It's something I thought about a lot, and I found it very fun to think about how these characters would feel. And actually, the character of Brian was probably the hardest for me to write, and I was very scared, to be honest, because especially in today's publishing climate, you know, I'm a white middle-aged woman. I'm not a young Black boy who wants to dance on pointe, and a lot of writers get criticized for writing characters that are not them. And I actually, at a writers' conference, spoke to several Black authors who basically said to me, you don't have the right to write this character. And that was very challenging. I mean, as a dancer, you learn to take feedback and criticism and process it, and then decide, am I going to accept this or not? And what I realized is, I understood what they were saying, but I also knew that this character would never appear in a book if I didn't write him. So I felt like I had to do my homework, and I had to do the best that I could. Hopefully, people will accept that and understand my intentions with it. This is what the ballet world is like now. This is how it is today. And I don't think the color of Brian's skin or necessarily Brian's intentions matter. To me, that character really represents finding out who you are, even if the world sees you as something else, and then persisting with being who you are. And a lot of times that is a tension between parents and children. And I think, to me, Brian's journey in some ways is sort of the most moving, and hopefully hopeful for a lot of kids that are trying to figure that out. Yes?
I have a question for the both of you. What is your favorite ballet that you were in? And like, which is a favorite ballet or the most moving ballet that you saw in the audience or like on YouTube?
That's a great question.
For
You
me,
gotta take it first.
favorite ballet I was in was probably Giselle. Beautiful full length. It was my first time taking on a character that large, so I think that was really exciting. And it's just, I love the drama of that story and very different characters between like first act and second act. I love acting, so that was really fun. I think most moving, I saw a performance of Swan Lake when I was 5 years old that's when I decided, I was like, this is what I'm doing with my life. So I think that one's probably gonna
In
take
Philadelphia?
the cake. In Philadelphia, yeah.
I'm looking because in the book, Serena's mom takes Serena and Lauren to go and see Giselle at P&B. And there's a beautiful illustration that I, of course, cannot find at this moment. And Giselle is kind of considered a real ballerina role, like a real hallmark of, I mean, for Sarah to do that was a very huge deal. She's fabulous in it last year. But that's like a real ballerina role, and it's a very big deal. And that's in the book. That ballet is in the book. So, and P&B did it last year. I trained at the School of American Ballet. I wanted to dance with New York City Ballet, and I was told I was too short. And that's how I went to Miami. But both of those companies do a lot of Balanchine ballets, which I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but it's the classical ballets are usually the story ballets, Giselle, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and that's what I grew up with at Ballet West. But the Balanchine style ballets, George Balanchine was one of the most influential choreographers, directors in the country, and he founded New York City Ballet. And his ballets really took away costumes and stories and what made dance a very athletic, I mean, it was about the dancing and visual representation of the music. So I was very stimulated by those ballets, and when I went to SAB in New York, I just wanted to do Balanchine ballet like crazy. And those that take my class know I'm always lecturing about Balanchine style, and that's just what I do. So my favorite Balanchine ballet, one of them is Ruby's. Did you dance that yet? Yeah. And so that was a part I learned for the SAB workshop, and I danced in it in Miami, and I also got to dance Ruby's at the Kennedy Center Awards, because when I was there, Edward Villela, who was my director, received the Kennedy Center Award, and so we got to go do that performance live, which is like such a great memory in my mind. And if you get the chance to see it, it's super jazzy, super cool ballet. I hope you do it again so I can see you dance it, because it's just awesome.
So fun.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. Anyone else? Daniel.
You mentioned a male on Pointe. How rare is that, or what does that mean for a non-ballet person?
Okay, that's a great question. So historically, and Sarah could probably talk about this too, but historically, men didn't dance on Pointe. Or if they did, they danced with a company called the Trocaderos, where they would go and drag and dance on Pointe, and it was kind of campy. But especially in the last few years, there have been dancers coming up, in the way the culture is now, who are either non-binary or whatever they are, they would like to dance on Pointe. And that has been something that P&B has been a real leader in, and embracing and letting these dancers really just be who they are. And it's becoming more, I mean, even when you think about historically, everybody wore pink tights, even if that wasn't the color of their skin, or pink shoes. And that's something that P&B is really leading in this country. And now we have dancers at P&B that do. You want to talk about that a little bit more? You have much more up-close experience
I
with.
just think it's interesting in general, because when we think about ballet, how it started historically, like only men were allowed to do it. So, and they were often doing, like representing women until we were allowed to do it. So it is funny how like we have to keep navigating. It seems like a big deal, but it feels like this is, if you want to wear a pointe shoe, why shouldn't you?
Right, what does
If
it
you're
have to
good,
do with
you're
your,
good.
what does it have to do with your gender, right? Or
Yeah. So I don't know. It's really cool to see, especially at P&B, the acceptance and there was no well, I don't know if we can do this. I was like, well, why not? So I guess let's keep going with it, and it's been really beautiful and really cool to see.
I think it's inspired a lot of people that maybe felt like the dance community didn't embrace them, that there's room for everybody and everybody to be who they are. And one of the reasons I wanted this in the book is that the book is a little utopian, or sort of how I would like the dance world to be. It might not be where it is, how it is everywhere, or yet, or now, but I wanted to paint that picture so we could kind of picture that as a space. Yes, Kim.
So
I'll get to you. You can read it.
So what is the impact of being a professional ballerina at a younger age to your later life experience? For example, as a student in Stanford and your later career in a published house, and as mom, as wife. Yeah.
That's a wonderful question. Ooh, that's a deep question. You know, it's interesting. I feel it's very nice to sit here with Sarah and think about that, because I think it's played a huge role. My dance background has played a huge role, and especially the way that I pulled away from it at a certain point in my life, and now, oh my God, my husband's always like, everything's ballet. Why? Like, it's so much ballet again. And it wasn't intentional, but I think that so much about that discipline, the appreciation for music and art and the manners. And I mean, in ballet class we already learned good manners. We learned to cover our mouth when we yawn, or not lounge on the bars, or things like that have come with me. I mean, and gosh, I don't know, maybe people who know me could answer this better, but when I went to Stanford, I was much older. I was I was young for a dancer to have left her career. I was 22. But there were two other dancers at Stanford at the same time. One was 26 and had danced in Houston Ballet, and one was 28 and had danced at Dresden Ballet. I guess Stanford is supportive of dance, which is pretty cool. And all of us were kind of lost. I mean, for as much as when you're a dancer and you're in the world and everyone's applauding for you and you're this important person, when you go into the other world, it's suddenly like strange. It was very shocking to like move into a dorm with a roommate who's putting up an NSYNC poster, and I had my own apartment and career and the whole thing. It was very humbling. But I also had learned how to work hard. I knew how to rely on myself. I had a lot of skills that a lot of other people had not learned yet. And as far as writing or other things that I wanted to tackle, I knew how to work hard. I knew how to go in and do the work. And I think that skill has helped me do everything. It's helped me have twins and 4 kids and run my house and do all the things that I do, and now I kind of don't know how to not, which is probably not so good, right? But now it's actually, I'm the happiest I've been in dance. Somebody asked me, it was at a different event, how, like on my social media, I always seem like I really love dance and I'm really happy about it. And it's very genuine, which I wouldn't say in my 20s it was. And I've just found a way to exist with it being a part of me, but it's not my whole life. I have a lot of other things in my life, and I feel like I'm a much more well-rounded, better person now than when it was my whole life. And I also feel like I'm 45 now. I'm still in the ballet world, which is kind of rare. A lot of dancers will do their career and then be done, which I did. I mean, I had 10 years where I didn't even go in a studio. And like, if not me, then who? Like, who's gonna do this? Who's gonna talk about it? Who's gonna welcome new people in? I've just kind of felt this, I guess maybe you feel your mortality a little more at this age and parents getting older or whatever, but I just feel like why am I at the table, right? And what good can I bring at this point in my life? And so, I don't know, now I'm just rambling. That answer. Yes, it's played a huge role in my life. It continues to, and it has informed all my children, because they are all PMB students, and we have to now figure out how dance fits in their life. And I don't necessarily believe it fits as a career, but each of them are different and fabulous and wonderful, and we have to figure it out with them. And so I feel that for all my students, that a lot of them are struggling to figure out what does this mean to me, and how much time should I devote to this? How much should I criticize myself if I'm not good at this one thing, but I could be good at many other things? And I just feel a sense of responsibility that I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in, and that I want to give back to that, because it's given me a lot.
I think your sister had a question.
Yeah.
You found the picture!
Yeah.
Will you hold it up? This is the Giselle picture. I couldn't find it.
I've actually seen Giselle.
Did you see
Yeah.
Sarah and Giselle? Or somebody else?
It was last year. It was last year.
This is the Giselle picture. And actually, what's cool about this picture is that the illustrator did it off of P&B poster, and there's, that's Cowrie, actually. I mean, you wouldn't know, but Cowrie is on the faculty at P&B, but she was a principal. And
she coached us, and Giselle.
and she coached you, right? And so you see how ballet is very much passed down. There's a real heritage in it. And yeah, that's she's in the book. You're finding that. Did you have another question?
Yeah. I was gonna say, which P&B studio do you teach at more?
So I'm primarily at the Bellevue studio now. You know, every year as teachers, our schedules change. We're at the mercy of the principal of the school. So for many years I was in Seattle, but now I'm always in Bellevue. And that could change again. So life is long, you never know. But this year I'm definitely in Bellevue, and last year I was in Bellevue too. And you go to Bellevue. Are you back at P&B this? No, just for the summer.
We went for the summer course.
Right, you were there. I remember you from the summer, but you're not there now. Anyone else?
I have a question for Sarah. What do you do when the season is over?
Sometimes it's only a few weeks at a time, depending on whether we're touring and whatnot. But like this past summer, I really didn't give myself a break at all. I taught at Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet for 3 weeks, and yeah, I'm dabbling in teaching. I think this was the first summer where I was like, wait, I actually really love this. Like you were saying, there's so much that you can give to the next generation, and that is so exciting. And I don't think I fully knew until I was doing it consistently that that could be an option for me someday. I'm also in school for business, and see how that goes. But yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about how the dancers do that.
Well, our union actually, there's like a few different options for us. Some people just go through whatever school they would like to do, but P&B also offers us Seattle University classes. So teachers from Seattle U professors will come after our work day and teach us in our boardroom. And then I actually do through AGMA, the union, they give us access to school for free, completely for free. And it's through a school in Ohio State, and yeah, I mean, it's amazing to be able to continue my studies, and education was really important growing up for me. There was no ballet unless I had straight A's, so it's nice for me to keep working my brain in that sense. It's really nice when I come home after a long day and to take my mind into a completely different focus. Yeah, it's been great. I'm really lucky.
So that's really interesting, actually, because so when I am earlier than Sarah, but I remember trying to bring a program like that to Miami City Ballet and was told that you're here to dance and that's what you do. And so that alone can show you how much the dance world has evolved, right? That they've come to recognize that dancers are people too, and that they're, you know, it's not all over when you're 40. And there are, you know, school is important, other things are important. You have to be well-rounded, so I think that's so awesome.
I had a teacher that would always say, if you're smart, you dance smart. And so she was another one that was like, school is important. You could not be here right now if you didn't do your work. Because I was homeschooled too, so balancing all of that was difficult.
Yeah, that's challenging.
Yeah.
It's not easy, so. Yes.
So how many hours in a typical week are you dancing, rehearsing, or doing school, or having free time, or is there a day off, or how does it?
Give us a day in the life.
Yeah,
or a week in the life.
Yeah, I mean, my schedule changes daily, really, depending on what we're working on. But class starts at 9:15 for us. Company class for our warm up, 9:15 to 10:45, and then we're rehearsing 11 to 2. We get an hour lunch break, and then we rehearse 3 to 6. That's generally our rehearsal day. And then when we have like the Seattle U classes that are offered in the building, it's 3 times a week from like 6:30 to 8:30, and then obviously we're doing all of that extra homework and whatnot on the remaining days. and greetings and papers and yeah, and then
performing sometimes on weekends, sometimes on.
yeah, and when we perform on the weekends, they'll give us Mondays off. So that will either be like school catch-up day, or I have 2 dogs, so if I have time off, it's with them. But there's not a whole lot of downtime.
No downtime. None.
Yeah.
When last time I went to the ballet, I thought it was interesting because the world has changed with social media a lot, and then we were sitting.
Talk loud,
Oh,
because
sorry.
no one over here can
I was
hear
just
you.
saying the world has changed so much with social media. When we went to the ballet, Miriam was like Instagramming various people that she knew that were dancing, saying great job and all this kind of stuff. So it was a completely different world that she could communicate with behind the scenes with the dancers. Do you guys kind of keep in touch that way and in other companies? And like, how does that change? How does that change things in the ballet world with having social media?
It's got to be completely different than when I was dancing.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot that it's actually maybe dangerous now because you're just seeing everyone show their tricks on the Instagram.
Their best
and-
clips.
Yeah, their best clips, right? But it's also amazing. Yeah, so many of my friends, I was trained at the Rock School, and it was a lot of international students, big boarding ballet school in Philadelphia, and they're all over the world now. My class, they're like San Francisco Ballet, Boston Ballet, Houston. So it's nice to keep in touch and see where we all went in our careers, and yeah, social media has been great for that, for sure.
Yeah, see, when I was dancing, you know, you had your friends from ballet school and you never saw them dance again. Or maybe once,
Wow.
if they came on tour, but that you were always so busy with your own schedule that it's just a totally different world now. It's really neat. And also, I have very few pictures or video of when I was dancing, whereas like my children's lives are documented hour to hour pretty much, right? And yeah, that's very different. Anyone else?
I have another question for Sarah. What were some of your favorite summer courses that you've attended?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Good question.
I did a lot of summer courses. It was also specifically my goal to try as many as I could. I know a lot of people found like one that really worked for them, and honestly that's also great because you build a rapport with that school, and that's how maybe you end up in that company someday. But I would switch it up every year. I think one of my favorite courses I did, it was intense. I wouldn't recommend it now, but like because it was Bolshoi.
Oh my
Summer
gosh.
course, 6 weeks, 12 years old. It was incredible. Like none of the teachers spoke English, so our days were just like packed with classes, but then also we had a Russian language class at the end of the day so that we could understand what corrections we were being given. They literally didn't speak any. It was amazing. It was like you were completely submersed into this.
Did your mom go with you?
Mm-mm.
You went on your own at 12.
Yeah. I mean, but we were like, it was dorms,
Yeah.
it was all in the same space. It was like an old high school that they put us in or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Bolshoi. I clearly loved my PMB summer course. It worked out well for me. I think those were probably my first and my last. I don't know what that says, but yeah, those were the most influential, I think, in my training anyway. But I would try to change it up. Like I did Bolshoi, and then the next year I was at SAB, I'm pretty sure, and you know, I was always kind of then San Francisco and something a little more classical. I thought it was important for my training.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think you go and sample all the different, because each place is different, has sort of a different character, flavor.
See what you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
How long are those programs? You're 12 years old and you were.
They're about 6 weeks, right? Yes.
This question for both of you two. Does anybody do ballet in your families other than you two? I know you have your kids doing it, but is there anyone like siblings or?
Oh gosh, everybody else in my family is 2 left feet. So, yeah, no, there was nothing before in my family, right? I mean, my kids are doing it because they're doing it. It doesn't mean that we'll see if they continue to do it.
No, not for me. My mom and my grandma did like ballet folklorico. They're from Mexico, and that was required, but there was no ballet training. This was like a fluke. There was a dance studio by my house growing up, like right around the corner, and I think my parents were like, we should make her do something, and that's kind of how it started. I don't think they were expecting this. Yeah.
They didn't know what they were signing up for.
They didn't know what they were signing up for, but now it's cool. Every day they're like, oh, really did that.
Yeah.
It was them, really, because that's so much work for, I can't even imagine the driving. Like, my mom quit her job so that she could drive me to ballet every day. It was insane.
Yeah. I mean, that is one thing that you'll find in the book that the adults are very complex, that I try to explore the relationship between the kids and their parents, because it's a big commitment for parents, right? It really is a huge deal. And so, that gets kind of lost in the, here's the kid on stage, but there's a lot to be said for being a ballet parent too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So both of you, as dancers and as a parent, do you have any advice for upcoming dancers to deal with all the challenges that there are in the dance world? And while there is great success, there's a lot of failure and a lot of being pushed down, and how to build that resilience.
It's such a hard, because it's so loaded. Like, yeah, I think there were so many years where I was being told by, like, the directors of the school that I trained in, they didn't really think this was a realistic career path for me. They didn't like the way my body was developing. They were like, you're good, you'll have a career, but it might not be a very good one. Like, I felt like I was constantly being pushed down. And I think, for one, I had a really great support system. My parents were like, no, if this is what you want to do, we're going to do this. And I'm really glad I had that, because otherwise I probably would have just been like, is this going to be worth it? Because this feels awful. And it still happens. I mean, in this career, it's the casting, it's the, still feeling like you're never quite good enough. And I think just having a really full, well-balanced life is going to make it not feel so make or break in the studio. It's not like every day I'm like, it's just ballet. And it's a good thought to have, because it's beautiful and it can inspire, and there's a lot of great things that can come out of it, but it's also just a thing we do. And I think that's also important to remind ourselves.
That's wise. I'm asking those same questions, if that makes you feel any better.
Yeah.
I think it so much depends on your individual kid. This might not be the most helpful thing, but like, each of my kids is very different, very special. I know some of these kids, and they're very different and very special. And I know that, my parents really, my mom was supportive, my dad was a little like Lauren's dad in the book, of like, there's only one good job in ballet, it's the principal in New York City Ballet, and she's crazy, and everyone else thinks they want to be her, and she's miserable. Like, he had this whole dialogue about, right, when you're a dance student, you always just want to be someone else, or you want to be like someone else, or, there's famous stories about how everybody in New York City Ballet, when Suzanne Farrell was the star, everyone was like cutting their eyelashes at an angle and like weird stuff like that. And what I try to do is really make sure my kids know they are awesome how they are, and that what Sarah said is absolutely true, that ballet is one place, it's one activity, it is not the whole world. And it is really easy for, if you have a kid who's like a type A kid who wants to please everybody and is a real perfectionist, it's really hard not to take these things very hard. I mean, I think about the year I didn't get Clara. I was like this close in the final audition, and then and this kind of, some of this experience is reflected in the book, but there was another family who donated a lot of money to Ballet West, and then she became Clara, and I cut it. Boy, was I a wreck for like months and months and months, and I don't know how my parents deal with that. The only thing I will say is that I learned a lot from those experiences, that if you can just, when your kids are disappointed and when they feel like, let them sit in that, because the same thing is true for my writing. This looks great now. We're talking like 25 years of rejection and rejection and rejection and rejection. Like, thus I have to wear sparkles on this day, because, right? But that if your kids can learn to deal with failure and rejection, that is one of the best, most resilient skills. And as a parent, I just try to be the one at the end of the day saying, you're awesome how you are. And I don't know if that's helpful to you, but I think it's just really, all I can do is acknowledge it's really, really hard. I'm trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Sarah and I this will be your only opportunity to get Sarah and me to sign the books at the same time, which I think is kind of cool.
And please tell all your friends. I mean, this has really been a labor of love. So the more you want to take a picture of yourself on social media with your book, or just tell any dance lover you know, or write a review on Amazon or Goodreads, all of that stuff helps. And I'm just really grateful for the community support. I'm really grateful to my students because I probably learn more from you guys than you learn from me. And I'm grateful we have Sarah and her cohort to make our lives more beautiful and give us dance, especially since during COVID we didn't know if we'd have it again. So, yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay. I see some of you brought your copies of the book. If you want a copy of the book, we have some here for signings. We also have some treats for everyone. Wouldn't be a party without goodie bags, so we have little goodie bags.
Get a goodie bag.
And you're welcome to shop around. I'm not gonna like fit Pointe shoes or anything, but you're welcome to shop around.
Yeah.
Yes, Lynn's in our cast. We're all purple.
Cute.